Morning, 9:05 on Friday, the 26th of June. Coming up later in this hour, an appreciation of the career of Patrick McNee, yes, dashing steed from the Avengers. 93, unfortunately, but he died. We'll remember him and some of those extraordinary shows and some of the remarkable plots in that great TV show. And on the subject of extraordinary, the story of the Muslim bus driver who got compensation because he wasn't allowed to pray in his boss's office. Stay tuned for that.
Nick Ferrari at breakfast on LBC.
Well, my next guest for 9.5 years was at the very helm of everything to do with transport for London. He's also been widely credited playing a key, if not crucial, if not major role in making sure that London 2012 goes down as arguably among the top two, if not the best Olympics the planet has ever seen. He's still the Commissioner of Transport for London, Sir Peter Hendy, but as you will know if you've been listening to the news, he soon moves to a new top job at Network Rail. That story broke yesterday. And Sir Peter, welcome to the studio. What a baptism for you. 1, 2, 3, 4 front pages talking about the disaster, the shambles of what's happening at Network Rail. Quite a task waiting ahead of you.
Yeah, morning, Nick.
Morning, sir.
I think it is. It's a non-executive chairman job. I've been asked to do 4 days a week for 2 years. And, I mean, as ever in these things, there's a lot of good people working away every day trying to fix things and make things better. But, I mean, you'd have to agree it's extremely unfortunate that the Secretary of State had to stand up and say, well, actually, some of the things they were going to do have been well put to one side for the moment.
They use the word paused.
Yes, and I think that probably is the right word because actually there's no doubt actually this government has committed itself to a huge infrastructure investment programme. And I'm not surprised it's difficult to deliver because if you remember what's happened on the Tube, we struggled with the Jubilee line mightily. It was the most enormous shambles for weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks with loads of closures. And we've had to work out how to do it, and we've had to work out how to do it so it's effective, so we don't screw the customers up, and so that in the end you get a better railway. Now, I think we've done that. The national railway network is much bigger, it's much more geographically dispersed, and I think but it clearly is displaying, as you can read in the papers, some of the same characteristics. So we'll see. I go to it with optimism that the sort of men and women who work on their railway, like the ones who work on my system, are good people. We'll see how we get on. So that's about as much as I can say, Nick.
Well, just like how long is a pause, Sir Peter?
Well, I don't know. I haven't read much more in the last 24 hours than you've read in the papers.
Well, when did they come and talk to you about this possibility?
Well, not terribly long ago, actually.
Well, what does that mean, Sir Peter?
Well, this time last week I was happily sailing on expecting to carry on doing this.
Goodness me!
But it's and I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised. I think actually some of these changes, if they're going to happen, actually big changes happen quite quickly. And I had to make my mind up. I've done this for 9.5 years. I've enjoyed every moment. I've got 30,000 people who've worked really hard for me and for the organisation. And I went home and said to Sue, I said, how about if I work 4 days a week and not 6.5 days a week? And she seemed to be quite enthusiastic about that. So here I am, and I will be very sad.
Will you speak with Richard Parry-Jones, the man who's been fired?
I've spoken to him. He rang me yesterday, and we had a very nice chat. These things move on. I mean, you've got to look.
Do you have sympathy for him?
Actually, I have sympathy for everybody because I think I've been here 9.5 years. That's a very long time, and it's very unusual to do a job like this for so long, and. Actually the tide goes in and out on politics, the economy changes. In a way, it's quite ironic that they appear from the front pages to be in some difficulty because the government wants to put so much money in. You wouldn't have believed that 15 or 20 years ago. We have struggled in Transport for London to get ourselves...
But why did Mr Parry-Jones not get it right? What did he get wrong?
Oh, well, I can't say that.
Well, you must have a view.
No, actually, I don't have a view, because most of my views up until the last few days have been about making transport in London better.
Right.
I'll come back some other time. And
Well,
tell you
we might come back.
runs
Let's
me.
get some of the calls. That's what it's about. Your opportunity to call the man. Remember, for the next, what have we got, 2 or 3 weeks, I think Sir Peter is in charge of all the tubes and this extraordinary road building programme. I sense a call might come up on about that. Matt's in Youghal to get us started. Matt, you're through to Sir Peter. Go ahead.
Yeah, good morning. Good morning, Sir Peter.
Morning.
Can I ask, have you left TfL due to the pressure and scrutiny by the London Assembly and the media on your mistake of licensing Uber and deregulating the taxi and private hire industry?
No.
You haven't, no? So you agree it was a mistake, and you agree that you deregulated the taxi and private hire industry?
No, as a matter of fact, I don't, and it
Wasn't
it's
a mistake.
It wasn't a mistake. We have no choice. If you look at the legislation, cut away all of the post-event analysis and the 2020 hindsight vision. If Nick Ferrari comes to us and says, "I want to operate a private hire vehicle business in London, providing that you're not so criminally afflicted that you shouldn't get a licence, I am obliged to give you one."
Yeah.
And they came to us, and we gave them a licence because we are obliged to give them one.
So, Peter, so you admit to making the mistake, though, of you have actually deregulated the trade, though? Do you admit that?
No, I haven't. We haven't changed.
Yes, you have.
Well, you know, you want an answer? We have not. We haven't done anything like that.
But, Matt, if it's a legal obligation for Sir Peter and TfL to respond in the way, and we have to take his word for it, and by the way, my background seems to suggest that Sir Peter is right here, what was he meant to do?
Well, to be fair...
Precisely, he couldn't do anything else, could he, Matt?
We could go into the legislation, Nick, and that would bore the listeners, right?
Go on.
The legislation, he's allowed them in basically illegally, really, because it's against their legislation. And I think if it goes to court, Mr. Sir Peter will be called up, and it could be quite embarrassing for him.
Well, you're at your liberty to try to judicially review us for issuing a licence when we shouldn't have done, or for continuing their licence, if you want. But I can tell you the legislation obliges to do it. What I do think, I think two things. One of which is, you'll have seen Boris yesterday stood up and praised the virtues of the taxi industry in London, which is world famous and iconic. You'll also see that we've both said that actually one of the other power that we don't have, Nick, which I think we should have, is to limit the number of licences. Currently we've got 82,000 private hire vehicle driver licences. And I am becoming worried.
Isn't 1,000 a month are joining up or something? Is that right?
Yeah. And I'm worried about the scale of congestion that's causing, both in people parking in the West End and in London, and also the number of PHVs driving around. Outside London, local authorities who licence them do have the power to limit the number of taxi licences. Inside London, we have no such power. Again, if you turn up and you satisfy the qualifications to be a PHV driver, we are obliged to give you a licence, as it is with a taxi driver. Now, I think we should have the power to constrain it. So does Boris. He's been talking to senior people in the government, because actually what I don't want to wind up with is huge congestion on London streets created by PHVs driving around looking for work.
When is the appeal over Uber likely to be heard?
I think I read on the BlackBerry it is in October.
Oh, gosh, that's some time away. James is in Gravesend. You're through to Sir Peter. Go ahead, James.
Oh, hi. My question is actually a caveat to your first caller. I was just going to ask, even though Sir Peter's going on to Network Rail, will he still be involved in the London Assembly meetings at City Hall? As to what has gone on with the London taxi and private hire trade over the last year or so?
OK, will you still be attending? I think I know the answer to this.
Well, if they tell me to come, I expect I'll go. I'm not afraid of defending what I or the organisation have done or are required to do by law. And I think it's perfectly right to have public hearings about what public officials do. I don't mind. The atmosphere in the last one wasn't entirely enjoyable, but then there's a lot of people who feel very strongly about it. But actually, it's interesting, Nick. I mean, I only take taxis by and large, because I think they're quite nice to travel in. And
that's if you're not on a tube, you mean?
Well, you know what I mean.
Yeah, that's right.
You know
as opposed to minicabs.
Somebody will ring up now and say he should be on the tube. I was on the tube yesterday.
No, you do drive a bus, so I know what you're saying. When it is necessary, you'll only take a London taxi.
Absolutely. Yeah. And the truth is that the vast majority of people in the taxi trade are very nice people. They're trying to earn a living. They're the way in which the taxi and private hire trades in London has been disturbed by new technology and by a big new organisation coming in is profoundly difficult for people. Now, actually, we've got to find ways around it. But there's no point in people telling me, other than challenging us in court, that we should have done something different, because if you read the legislation, we have to licence people. It's a regulatory activity.
Richard's in Greenwich. Richard, you're through to Sir Peter. Go ahead, Richard.
Hello, Sir Peter.
Hello.
Hi, Richard.
I'm just going to give you a little brief. We're a sign company down in Greenwich.
A sign company in Greenwich.
Right.
We've been here for a couple of years.
Yeah.
We always see at Transport for London saying we are looking out for small businesses and help people get in with their work.
Yes.
We have a loading bay outside our shop, which is a slip road to the main road.
Right.
That loading bay has been there for years, and we used to get customers. They come, they stop, they drop their work, they go away. In the evening, when they're coming from work, they pick their work and go. And we used to employ up to 5 employees years ago. But all those we have to let go because the business has gone down. It's been killed off by your camera, which was put there on a pretext that it's going to watch and help us reduce crime.
But now, presumably, is it one of those where if you park at the wrong time of day, your customers can get a ticket for, I think it's £60? Is that what's happening?
It's throughout the day.
Sorry, say again, how many hours of the day?
7 to 7.
7 a.m. to 7 p.m. you're not allowed to park in this bay?
You are allowed to park in a bay, loading bay.
Yeah.
Right.
If you stop there for less than even 3 minutes, you get a parking ticket.
For more than 3 minutes, I think. Yep.
Even ourselves, when we have a van, we've got things to offload.
I've got it. And what has the impact been on the business then, Richard, before we hear from Sir Peter?
Sorry?
What has the impact been on your business? What's your business's name? Give yourself an advert. What's it called?
It is Signware. We do
Signware.
sign, and we run another business which does solar traffic lights.
And what has the impact been on Signware?
Big impact.
Okay.
Reducing number of employees to 5, from 5 to 2
Okay.
or 1 is really a big impact. And
OK, stay on the line, Sir Peter.
So, yes, I'm just trying to remember. We had another case of this in Streatham High Road, and I got somebody to go down and look at the times and the rules about the parking bay. It was a Vets, I think, in Streatham High Road. And we fixed it. So what I'll do is I'll get somebody, if Vicky's
will
with
make
me,
that happen,
if somebody will get Richard's number,
Yeah.
we'll get somebody to go down and see what we can do. Because the object of all of this is not to fine people. Actually, we don't want to fine people. What we want is traffic to flow. And we want his business to do well as well. So I'll get somebody to go down
I mean,
there.
7 through 7, if it is as presented, that's very tough for him to run his business.
Well, it isn't a loading bay if it's 7 to 7.
Is it not?
Because
You can't load. Okay.
Well, a business, there's no time for business.
Richard, stay on the line. We'll take your details, and I know it will be passed across to one of Sir Peter's team. Let's talk to one of my colleagues now. Martin's in Wood Green. You're through to Sir Peter Hendy. Go ahead, Martin.
Hi, just to carry out some of the earlier questions, the answers that he's given don't feel acceptable. If he's unable to regulate the roads, if he's unable to keep numbers down, what's the point of his position? We might as well have a monkey in his seat claiming the same excuses that he's not able to do anything. Why can't he do anything? Explain why he can't do anything, because there's too much congestion on the roads, and why did we have to wait for Boris, a Conservative who shouldn't even care about that stuff, to come out and say something? He should be doing something about it. What's the point of his role if he can't?
Well, actually, sadly, I can only do what the law allows me to do. The issue about the numbers of PHVs has only become an issue in the last few months. If you cast your mind back, and a lot of people listening will remember that the PHV trade, the minicam trade, was completely unlicensed until 2001, 2, 3, and we went through a massive exercise for the first time to licence what had been a considerable risk for Londoners' safety. It stayed static at about 45 or 50,000 licences for a long time, but it's now rising faster and to a level we've never seen before. I don't think whoever wrote the legislation and passed it in the late 1990s ever thought that that would be the case, so they didn't give us the powers to do it. Now, there's no point in calling me a monkey or anything else if I can't do something because the law doesn't allow me to.
Martin?
Well, if you're admitting it's a problem, then that's proven that you failed London, because your role is to have done something and stopped it from happening, and you haven't. So you need to own up to your mistakes, otherwise you're just sitting there lying.
Well, I don't think I'm lying. I'm explaining what the limitations to the legislation are, and what I would say is this: I'm a public servant. I do the job which the law requires us to do. I can't do things that the law doesn't allow us to do.
Let's move on. Daniel's in West Hampstead. Daniel, go ahead.
Morning, Nick. Morning, Sir Peter.
Morning.
Morning. As a motorist in London, I'd like to know, for the last few years, you say you're trying to decrease congestion, and we've had an increase in the congestion charge, and Boris has been saying he's trying to reduce the pollution because we're going to be fined by the EU. Why has TfL been narrowing all the main roads in central London? There were lots of roads around Haymarket, Pall Mall, Camden Town as well, Parkway and Camden. They were all 3-lane roads. They've now been narrowed to 1 lane, so you've got traffic backed up. And it's maddening. It's so frustrating. It's causing pollution, congestion. I'd like to know why that's been going on.
Well, the first thing to say is all the roads you mentioned, I'm not quite sure about Parkway, but the other places you mentioned, certainly Haymarket and Pall Mall are actually Westminster's roads and not ours. But there is a programme, and you're right to identify it, which is that a lot of people in London and a lot of local authorities want London to be a nicer and better place. If you look at Camden High Street, you can either have 3 lanes of traffic roaring up it, or you can have a bit less traffic and you can have wider pavements and it can look nice and the traders can do better and it will be somewhere.
Why will
to
it
go.
be less traffic?
Well, it will be less traffic because there's less space on the road.
But they'll just be backed up further.
Well,
just by building bigger pavements doesn't mean cars won't want to go up Camden High Road.
I know, Nick, it's a very difficult balance, isn't it? Because on the one hand, we're trying to make London work and businesses work and get people around the city. On the other, there's huge pressure. If you look, let's take King's Cross, which is mostly our roads, and there's huge pressure at King's Cross. We've got the Euston Road goes through there, 3 lanes of traffic in each direction, really major trunk road. We've had 2 cycling fatalities in that one-way system. There's a huge pressure to take road space for vehicles out and do something for cyclists. There's huge pedestrian numbers, and there's also quite a clamour for the place to be greener. And what we're trying to do is to balance all that lot and actually...
But it's always the motorist who loses, isn't it?
Well...
Can I refer... Is the Victoria Embankment, is that yours?
Yeah, the Victoria Embankment certainly is.
My God, Sir Peter. That is a car... Let's be candid with each other. That now is a car park at some points of the day.
Well, we're building the cycling facilities that there was clamour to build.
Did you want it?
Well, I do what I'm told, actually. And
Did you want it?
What I would say is this.
Well, I'm going to take that as a no.
No, actually, you can't take it as a no. Cycling in London...
So you did want it?
Well, cycling in London has gone up by 200%, but it's not what I want. We did a public consultation. You've seen the results of it. We got thousands and thousands and thousands of responses saying, let's do something worthwhile for cyclists.
Do you question the wisdom of the cycle superhighway?
Well, I'll tell you what, every time somebody's killed or seriously injured on a bike... Leon and I look at ourselves and say, "Oh my God, what are we going to do?"
Well, ultimately, I know, Commissioner, I know, but ultimately, then ban all cars. That's the logic of your argument now.
I don't think it is. But it's very difficult because you get him in here. He's been to the site of.
Sorry, do you mean Leon Daniels? Yeah.
He's been to the site of 8 of these fatalities.
It's horrific.
He's normally there just after the incidents happened. He's been visibly affected, and so have I, by these things. And then can you say to yourself, oh no, we'll just let people cycle around on London's roads without alteration? Now, what I would say is that actually that there are some other things that we're trying to do. You know that we're trying to do something about the safety of big lorries, because that's not about road space, but it is about pedestrian safety.
Of course.
And the other thing that we're trying to do is to try to get deliveries made over a longer period of time, so there's less vehicles on the road at any one time, and that's really important too. But if we could shift, Nick, the peak of the morning peak from 7 till 1 into a period from 6 in the morning till about 8 in the evening, we would get instant relief in a way that you wouldn't require any.
What would it be till 1 in the morning, did you say?
No, from 6 in the morning till about 8 or 9 at night.
I'm so sorry, right.
And if you look at a graph, which I could draw you, but I can't because we're on the radio, if you could only reduce the amount of traffic in the mornings to flatten it out all day, a lot of these issues will be solved, and we're working very hard to do that.
The cycle superhighway, when it's finally completed, my understanding is cyclists will not be compelled to use it.
Well, that's my current understanding.
So why the hell are we building it if they don't have to use it?
Well, let's see what happens. If you go up to Stratford...
Let's see what happens.
Well, sometimes...
180 million... Let's see what happens.
Well, sometimes you have to. If you go up to Stratford, where we have got some dedicated cycle lanes, actually, there is virtually no cycling on the carriageway.
Virtually. So a little old lady could cycle down Victoria Embankment, should she so wish, with the one lane of London traffic allowed behind her, and there's nothing we can do about it.
Well, let's see what happens.
Well, I might be that little old lady.
If you're a little old lady, I recommend that you use these fabulous cycle routes that we're building at huge public cost. And actually, I think if anybody's out there who is a member of the cycling community, you know, we are all hoping that what we've done is to create something that people will use and will become a natural part of the city.
All right, OK. Johnny's in Brixton. Johnny.
Morning, gents.
Morning.
One simple question, which I'd love a direct answer. There are people now in central London in gridlock as we speak. Not one road has been deemed necessary to relieve the ridiculous congestion. I've been a cab driver 32 years. I know a little bit about the roads, along with so many long-suffering motorists and cyclists, and we do want their safety. Not one road. If you're going to tell me it's the individual boroughs that legislate this, what can we then, as the public, do to change this? Because I could give you scores of gridlock that could be alleviated by opening a road.
Well, I think the truth of it is simply this, which is that the last time there was large-scale road building in London was Westway and the West Cross route at Shepherd's Bush. It destroyed a community. It was deeply unpopular.
Not the community, please.
Well, there are people who live here. There's 8.5 million people live in the city. I'm just saying, the last time somebody tried to build comprehensive new roads to relieve congestion in London, there was a huge uproar, and no politician has proposed it since.
Sir. You haven't answered my question.
Yes, I have.
Here's a quick example. No, you haven't. Here's a quick
Give us a road that you would open this afternoon if you were so empowered.
I'll tell you right now. Coming down Brixton Hill,
Yep.
there used to be the last turning left before the town hall.
Yep.
They stopped it because it was for alleged safety. Bearing in mind, you could have put up the neon sign 20 miles an hour and hit hard the motorists who took a liberty by going more than 20 miles an hour. What you've got right now down Brixton and other areas, and don't get me going about Tower Hill because
I probably could.
You could let that through. But no, the boroughs refuse and TfL refuse. That would make roads safer, and the gridlock that probably dies now down in Wapping, all the way down
it's incredible.
East India, would so open up some roads.
Well, I'll tell you
Wapping
what.
Highway is a car park.
Well, I'll tell you what. There's 8.6 million people live in this
East,
city.
west, that way. Yeah, go on.
And it's busier than it's ever been before. The pressure between...
And so you take away lanes, road lanes?
Well, no, wait a minute.
Well, you do, Sir Peter.
The pressure between what people want to do when they live here and people who want to move around the city in vehicles is absolutely immense. That's the problem. And actually, everybody wants to live in a nice street. They don't want through traffic. They want it all to be calm. People who live in central London want central London to be calm. There's more people around. There's huge pressure on these things. Now, some of it actually is political in the sense that London has elected a mayor, and you can't say that Boris didn't say that he was keen on cycling.
Yeah, hang on, he never said he was going to turn the embankment into one lane.
Well, he published a very clear manifesto about encouraging cycling and making more room and making
people
cycling safer.
People will be dying because of the fumes in Wapping Highway and the embankment. If you're residential, there must be a real problem with air quality. Well, that east-west Wapping Highway this sort of time in the morning, it is a car park, Sir Peter.
Well, I mean, there certainly is a real issue with air quality in London. That's as much to do.
But it's not helped by these roadworks, is it, sir?
Well, no, it isn't. We've never done so much at once, and that I would say. But actually, we're doing something which the mayor and we and a lot of public people who commented believe is a good thing for the city.
All right, just got to get a couple of other things from you. London Underground drivers are saying that there's going to be a 24-hour strike over the introduction of a new night tube service at weekends. What's the latest on that?
Well, we've heard from ASLEF. They've decided to have a dispute. Sadly, we are the RMT and the other unions are balloting. I'm very disappointed. Actually, we have a lot of the allegations made in the papers are not right. We have not forced anything. We've talked to the staff about a reasonable deal for people whose contracts already include night working. We're not asking people to work any more hours. We're asking some of them to change hours, and actually we're going to create more jobs as a consequence. Now, I think it's misplaced. I don't think London needs any strikes. I've been here 9.5 years doing this job. I don't recall a serious dispute that affected Londoners that made any difference to the end of it, and I wish they'd get back round the table at ACAS, and we're going to try and meet them again next week.
Dan in Blackheath on an email. Last time Sir Peter was on LBC, he said he'd look at the possibility of getting the side gate at Lewisham railway station open because of all the roadworks, where you could use your Oyster card. It's still not happened.
So it says here, we sent someone there at Christmas and the entrances had changed, the signage has been amended, and it was easier to move using the National Railway Services, the DLR. But I'll send somebody down again and have another look.
All right, thank you for that. Terry's in St Albans. You're on the radio, Terry.
Good morning.
Hello.
A question for Sir Peter. He's mentioned the two phrases this morning, I'm a public servant and I do what I'm told. How comes that can correlate with his salary of, I believe it's over £500,000 a year? Which is very, very excessive for what he does.
Well, that's your view. I'm not going to comment on what I'm paid. That's actually a matter for somebody else.
Who? And with TfL itself, there are now 400 people earning, I believe. Can you tell if this is true or not? On over £100,000 a year.
Absolutely right. We've got the largest capital programme that anybody's ever done in London of tube upgrades, of building new railways, of modernisation and road modernisation, and you can't hire people to do those sorts of jobs. They're in huge competition. They're not bureaucrats in back offices. They're people doing things like rebuilding Tottenham Court Road Station. And
how are these salaries being paid for?
They're paid for out of public funds. They're paid for by a combination of fair income and government grant.
Right. Okay. But you're moving on to Network Rail. Can you divulge? Was you compelled to take the Network Rail job, and are you on a higher salary than your current one?
Well, I wasn't compelled to do it. I don't think in the modern world anybody's compelled to do anything. I accepted it, and.
It's reported you make £650,000 a year at Transport for London.
If the performance of the place is good enough.
Will you be making a similar salary at Network Rail?
No. What you'll find is that if you pro rata what I earn today for a 4-day week, you will find the rate of per day is virtually exactly the same.
Right. So you'll earn a little less, but for a 4-day week, because the outgoing chairman was making £250,000 for a 2-day week, was he not?
He was.
Right. So you're going to be making a little bit more than that.
I believe I am, but I'm.
Are you worth the money, Sir Peter?
Well, that's for somebody else to judge, isn't it? You can't come on the radio and say, "How about you? Are you worth the money?"
I should be paid more.
Well,
I should be paid more.
Well,
how's it going to be at Network Rail when we remember you recently described National Rail Services running in London as it's an S word that rhymes with pit, awful, and like the Wild West?
Yeah. Well, I apologise for the first one. That was a classic moment, I think. Look,
a classic moment.
Well, it's a classic moment for me. What I think is simply this: that actually, what we've tried to do at TfL is to move to a position where we're looking.
But it is awful, isn't it? Rail services in London.
Well,
National Rail Service.
Let me finish my argument at least. What we're trying to do at TfL is to look after our passengers better than we used to. If you get something wrong, or forget to touch out, we'll refund you automatically. I think people who use public transport generally are entitled to that sort of thing. Right. And I was voicing a frustration which, since I said that word, I've at least one email a day saying I was right. But I wasn't right in the sense that what I said right at the beginning is, in those places there's still lots and lots of people who work really hard every day. And I think one of the jobs of the top management, and maybe why you should pay the top management what they earn, is to actually guide the place in a way that you produce a better outcome.
Now today, Sir Peter, why is this the sound of the London Underground?
So, it's 50 years of Enterprise Neptune, which is the National Trust project to save Britain's coastline. And in celebration of that, Ivo Dorney, who is the National Trust Director in London, has persuaded us to play the sounds of the seashore on the PA at some stations. It's a lovely thing to do, isn't it? And tomorrow,
yes.
Underneath my Westway flyover, the Westway Trust is opening a beach, also in celebration.
All right. Well, I must persuade you to put me on all the national, out of the radio speakers one day across the whole, maybe across the rail network as well.
Oh, well, you can do...
Lastly...
Will you come and do a Poppy Day announcement?
Of course I will.
For the British Legion. Now, you could do that, couldn't you? Your
I would be honoured.
Would be well known.
I would be honoured. Lastly, in the State of London debate with the Mayor earlier this week, the Mayor put forward the idea of punishing law-breaking cyclists who jump the lights or ride on the pavements by confiscating their bicycles.
Yeah, I've got quite a lot of sympathy with that, actually. One of the real difficulties we've got with cyclists who break the law is that the sanctions are inadequate. Now, I would like to say one thing about it, which is that there are more offences on which your driving licence can be endorsed for an offence committed on a bike than most people think is the case. And actually, I've said to Bernard Hogan-Howe several times, I'd like some of those people to have an endorsement on their driving licence. Not behaving properly on the roads is not only unsafe for yourself, it's dangerous, and actually we want compliance because we want people to live safely.
Once you've got your feet under the table in the new post and it's no longer rhymes with Pitt and begins with S, will you come and do a phone-in for me from the rail network?
Of course I will, and as long as it's on one of the 4 days I'm working, not the fifth.
What about
hour.
if I pay for the extra day just 1 day a week?
Oh, well, if you've got that sort of money, I'll come in. I'll be driving my old bus on the
Good luck with it, Sir Peter. Thank you. Sir Peter Hendy here, appearing on LBC when news is next.